there does exist this myth that you can live a chemical-free lifestyle. Now, the reality is that because every single piece of matter in the universe is comprised of chemicals, it's either a pure chemical or it's a mixture of chemicals, there is no way to have any physical object which is chemical-free. Having the lifestyle of chemical-free is completely mythical. Yet some consumers are attracted to this fictitious way of living. Everything in our universe is a chemical. Our bodies are chemicals, our medicines are chemicals, the food we eat is made of chemicals. There is no way to go completely chemical-free. Studies have shown that people tend to overinflate the size of some risks in our world and underinflate others. Well, another one is plane crashes versus a risk of a glass of wine a day. Having one glass of wine a day actually makes people live longer. The risk of plane crashes is massively overfeared. The risk of wine is also completely overfeared. Underfeared are things like weather. Specifically, summer heat waves kills huge numbers of people, is massively underreported. And it really comes down to certain risk perception mechanisms. There are 7 of them I'll talk about, which are all triggered, unfortunately, by synthetic chemicals. Many of these fears are actually chemical, and they can be grouped together into what I call chemophobia. And chemophobia is a suite of misconceptions which cause people to overfear certain threats. And it includes a whole range of afflictions like being paranoid about gluten, or lactose, or trans fats, or all fats, or parabens, or sulfates, or formaldehyde preservatives. It can be anything in any product or food which causes people to have a really crippling, stress-causing reaction. And it's irrational because the effects of the mental stress that this causes far outweighs any negligible benefit that comes from avoiding those chemicals. There's often actually no risk at all to these chemicals, but people go through such stress trying to avoid them, and they spend so much more money on products and going places where they're not in contact with these chemicals. It becomes almost like a paranoia. And some people even call it chemonoia. And it's actually an affliction which mental health charities are now reaching out to talk about, especially with orthorexia, which is the obsession with eating well, which includes clean eating. It's all the fear of all of these different food ingredients lumped together. It's all part of chemophobia. And in my book, I explore this in great detail. One of the clearest conclusions from that book is that nothing is chemical-free. It is not possible to have any physical substance in our universe which is chemical-free. And sometimes people debate the definition of chemical, but if you just look in the dictionary and find what is the definition of chemical, you'll see it is a physical substance such as a compound or mixture. Basically, it's everything in our universe. So, I mean, I don't want to debate with the dictionary. The dictionary says everything in our universe is a chemical. It's therefore not possible to have a chemical-free lifestyle because we are made of chemicals. Chemophobia is defined as the irrational fear of compounds perceived as synthetic. Their fear is irrational because these chemicals actually pose no threat to our existence. And the perceived as synthetic part is really important as well, because one of the false pieces of logic that people subscribe to when they're afflicted with chemophobia is that chemicals are toxic because they're synthetic. Now, those two links are both wrong. Not all chemicals are toxic, and not all chemicals are synthetic, and not all synthetic things are toxic. There's actually no link between those three, but people do connect them when they have chemophobia, so they're part of the definition, they're built in. Some of these brands that label themselves as chemical-free actually have just replaced some of the synthetic ingredients with naturally derived alternatives. So one of the classic examples is they'll say they're chemical-free because they didn't use mineral oil. Instead, they've used a triglyceride from a plant, possibly even an essential oil. Now, because they both have oil in the name, you'd think that they are very chemically similar, that one is just a natural version of the other, but they couldn't be more different. And all I need to do is show you the chemical structures of each one. They are completely different. The plant oil is enormous in terms of its chemical structure. It's got complexity in there, it's got oxygen in there, which reacts. You've got the carbon-carbon double bonds often in there as well, which are incredibly reactive. The fatty acid tails can even break off and start doing different things on the skin. The mineral oil structure, even if you're not familiar with chemical structures and how to read them, look at how simple the mineral oil is. There's basically nothing on it. As organic compounds go, that mineral oil is basically as boring as it gets. It's completely inert. It doesn't even go into the skin. It does nothing. Chemically, it's not capable of doing anything. Look at the structure of it. I mean, anybody who studied beyond, say, grade 11 chemistry can tell you it does not react. So it goes onto your skin as a completely inert barrier and keeps the skin's natural moisture in your skin. Now, the plant oil is going to react in all these different unpredictable ways, and we are not even sure what is exactly in the plant oil. One plant can contain 100 or more different variations of that oil molecule, some of which will be doing things in your skin which we don't even fully understand. So, is it necessary to replace the safe, cheap, reliable, proven, natural mineral oil with something that is seasonally effective, that's unreliable, that's not so well tested, that actually some studies have shown causes irritation and causes contact dermatitis? Is it necessary to replace the safe one with something that's actually worse for your skin because it's naturally derived? I don't think it really justifies the risk. The consumer might be happy to tell people that they're using a natural alternative, but considering it possibly does harm to your skin and is certainly more expensive, it simply is not something I could ever recommend. Nature provides compounds that are far more complex than anything we can ever make in the lab. Nature produces the diversity of plants, animals, and of chemistry, of course, which we are taking advantage of now. Many new pharmaceuticals and new cosmetic products are using ingredients which have been inspired from nature, but the benefits of those ingredients can only come to fruition in a product if you go through such rigorous sourcing, testing, purification, and retesting. It's a laborious process to ensure that you've got quality standards through changing seasons from different parts of the world. Plants are not the same when they're grown in different soils. They're not the same when they're grown among different weeds, which are also co-harvested, especially in organic farms. You've got a lot of weeds growing, and 30% of your crop, up to 30%, could be weeds, the oil of which is also going into your product. You don't know what chemistry they've got and what they're doing to your skin. So there is a huge amount of quality control required, which only the major companies are really investing in. And my worry is a startup company can incredibly easily get hold of reagents and just mix them, make a product, get it to the market for a very, very, very small investment. Almost everybody in a developed country can afford to do that. The investment is tiny. So these companies are just springing up out of nowhere using essential oils, and because of weak regulations, they're managing to get them sold. Yes, they eventually get pulled off the shelves, but they get on the shelves without really being tested. And that's what worries me. Plus the fact that they're actually using dubious marketing claims and enormous price tags to sort of attract this luxury segment of the market. It does concern me. So ignore chemical-free, ignore natural. If your whole product claims to be natural, it's probably not. And don't automatically give all natural extract ingredients the green light. If they've been tested and clinically proven to be safe, mild, and effective, then you can trust them. But just because something's natural does not necessarily mean it's going to be safe. In some cases, it could even be more expensive, more harmful, and less effective. There does exist this myth that Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicines are automatically going to be natural, chemical-free, and usually organic. This usually leads to people assuming that Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicines are going to be safer, less toxic, and more effective. But unfortunately, this isn't always the case, because many Ayurvedic and traditional remedies are regulated much less strictly than traditional pharmaceuticals, which means that heavy metals much more easily get into the finished product. There are even studies that showed of medicines sold in the US, the natural remedies were most likely to have heavy metal contamination with mercury, lead, copper, arsenic, and chromium. People assume that because something is natural or organic, it must be safer, but that's really not what the science says. The truth is that if your product has been tested clinically to be proven effective and proven safe, then that's a good choice for you as a consumer. And this distinction between what is actually proven to work and proven to be safe and what is just natural is something that we really do need to get across to consumers. Natural is not a proxy for safe. The only way to determine whether something is safe is to test it extensively. And that's what has been done with most of these synthetic ingredients and formulations. The amount of testing required by these major companies is enormous before it goes to market, because it can be disastrous if something's ever slightly wrong. They spend millions on just making sure that they are perfectly safe before they get out to market. The natural brands though, as I said, it can be very quick and very easy for any person to start up their own natural brand. No testing required. It can be pulled off the shelf later, but you can get it onto market with almost no testing whatsoever. If there's one message that I ask you to deliver today to patients, it would be, please don't use natural, organic, and chemical-free as proxies for safe and effective. They're absolutely not. Just because something's natural doesn't mean that it's been so carefully sourced, carefully refined and purified and then preserved and then tested through clinical studies, repeated clinical trials. It doesn't necessarily mean just because it's natural, it's gone through that whole process of checking its safety and efficacy. So please choose naturals very carefully, and please choose the ones that have been tested clinically first.